This is the in-class review that you guys started in class today, Friday, and what I'm going to do is kind of take you through the process of how to set this stuff up without necessarily going through all of the addition and subtraction of decimals that's going to be needed for you to get the answer, just because we're a little short on time. After everything gets set up, whether it's addition or subtraction, multiplication, I'm just going to go to the bottom line and tell you what the answer is. You just have to kind of do the math on your own. Starting with these two fractions, we have to convert them to decimals first. At least that's what Common Core wants us to do. And what I was seeing a lot today was students doing something like this, taking 577 and making this 0.2 because they're seeing a 2 here, and then doing 398.3 because they're seeing a 3 here, and we really cannot do that. What we have to do is take our 2/5 and we've got to make it into an equivalent fraction over 10, or sometimes you can do it over 100, or even sometimes in some cases over 1,000. So in order to do that, we're creating an equivalent fraction for 2/5. Once we get this bottom in a base 10 system, which is 10, 100, or 1,000, or even greater than that, systems of multiplying by 10, we can then convert it to decimals. So we use the leap method here. We realize we're multiplying by 2. And that's going to now give us a numerator of 4. And then from 4/10 we can convert 4/10 into the decimal 4/10.4. So, therefore, 577 and 2/5 is 577.4. You could also do it this way. Some kids did do it this way and made it as an equivalent fraction over 100, like a percent. In this case, you're multiplying by 20. That's then going to make this 40 hundredths. And that would then create 577 and 40 hundredths, still 0.4 or 0.40. This fraction already has a denominator of 100. You just have to remember that 3 hundredths is expressed as 0.03. Once we've lined up our decimals properly, we're going to do the math, and you'll get 179 and 37 hundredths. And that is our answer for the first one. Moving on to number 2, we have to convert 3/4 into an equivalent fraction over 100 or over 10. Well, since we cannot do it over 10, we have no other option other than to do 3/4 as an equivalent fraction over 100. When you do the math on this, you're multiplying by a factor of 25. And you wind up with 75 hundredths. That's now going to make our fraction 65.75. And we're going to add to it 94 and 3 hundredths. Decimals are lined up. You'll wind up with 159.78. That takes us to 2A, which is our first word problem. The first thing that you have to realize is when you see these words how much higher, you have to realize that we're going to have to subtract these two numbers. I'm going to put the subtraction in there right now. But once again, we have to convert 4/5 to a decimal, and the same thing with 6/25. So when we do that, I'll do that off to the side. Doesn't matter whether I change 4/5 to something over 10 or something over 100, but I'm going to do over 100 because it's going to then fill up all of our empty place values, and you'll see it when we subtract it, we're actually going to need that hundredths place. We have to multiply both by 20. And you'll get 80 over 100, which is 80 hundredths. So our first number becomes 97.80. 97 and 80 hundredths. Okay, 6/25. Same thing. Equal to what over 100? We have to multiply our bottom by 4. And we do the same thing to the top. It's going to create a numerator of 24, a fraction of 24 hundredths, which as a decimal is expressed this way. And now everything is set up. Now I am going to go through the math on this because you have to borrow. And I want to show you that borrowing process. We cannot do 0 take away 4, so we've got to borrow 1 here. Change that to a 7. That's now going to create 10 minus 4, which is 6. 7 take away 2, which is 5. And then that's it for the borrowing. We don't have to do any more borrowing. 7 minus 4 is 3. 9 take away 6 is 3. And then when you answer that in the complete sentence, the melting point is 33.56 degrees higher. Okay, moving on. 2b is a two-part question, because in order to figure out this missing side, you've got to figure out this plus this first. And then you got to subtract that from the total. So like we taught, we're going to take the number that has the most amount of digits and put that up top. And then we're going to line up decimals when we add. Everything's lined up nicely. When you add that together, you get 20.7 centimeters, but we're not done. In order to figure out this missing side, we have to subtract our 20.7 from our total, which is 39.3. We have to borrow. That's going to create 6/10. 8 take away 0 is 8. 3 take away 2 is 1. And our answer for that missing side is 18.6 centimeters. Okay, lesson 10, distributive property. Most of you did very well with this. The number that we should be breaking apart is 15.6. 200 is outside our parentheses, and we break up 15.6 as 15 and 0.6. We're going to distribute this 200 to each number inside the parentheses, and that is going to create 200 times 15 plus 200 times 0.6. Now be careful with the multiplication here, because the amount of zeros is very important. If you choose to do 15 times 2, you'll get 30. And then you've got to add 2 zeros to make 3,000. Not 300, but 3,000. With 200 times 0.6, we have to realize that whatever our number is, it has to be a number less than 200. Because you're multiplying by a number that's less than 1. So if you want to do mental math and realize, okay, 2 times 6 is 12, because it's 0.6 and not 6, where you would normally get 1200, we now have 120. And then when you add that together, you get 3,120. And although I'm not going to do it here, I'd like you to go through the multiplication down here. 200 times 15.6. And when you go through it, you'll see you'll get 3,120. Same idea here. We're going to break up 12.3. Our 7,000 goes outside the parentheses. We break up 12 to 12 and 0.3. We're going to distribute the 7,000 to both of the numbers inside the parentheses, and that's going to create 7,000 times 12 plus 7,000 times 0.3. Seven thousand times 12 is 84,000. Not 8,400, but 84,000. 7,000 times 3, again, we're looking at a number that's going to be less than 7,000. You'll wind up getting 2,100. And then when you add both numbers together, you'll get 86,100. And when you check the math down below, down here, you'll get it to match up. Okay, because of time, I'm just going to set up the multiplication, show you what the answer is, and at least just show you the process of how we're going to determine where the decimal goes in the final product. Since we have a 3-digit number times a 3-digit number, it doesn't matter which number goes on top or which goes on the bottom. So we'll do it as it appears in the order in which it appears, 4.56 and 6.12. When we do multiplication, we are not necessarily lining up decimals. Now, in this case, they happen to line up by themselves anyway. But if this was, let's just say, 61.2, then you would put the 61.2 as is. We don't care about lining up decimals when we do multiplication. Like I mentioned in this case, they do happen to line up, and that's fine. And when you multiply properly, you're going to get 2,79072 without the decimal just as yet. To figure out where the decimal is going to go, as we've learned in class, counting from the far right, this decimal has been moved over twice. And I actually want you to put that in parentheses on the test because you will get credit for showing me that. And it's getting moved over twice from the right here. The total is 4 times between those two numbers. So starting on the far right, we move it once, twice, 3, 4 times. Drop the rock right there, and we get 27.9072 is our final answer. And you could always check these with a calculator after you're done. A 3-digit number times a 3-digit number can get lengthy, so be careful with your math. Now we have a 4-digit times a 3-digit. Well, our number with the more digits has got to go on top. And once again, our decimals just happen to line up naturally. Going through your math very, very carefully, you'll get a final product of 930,495. The decimal has been moved once here. It has been moved once here. That's a total of 2 times. And you wind up with 9,304 and 95 hundredths. Number 7 is an area question. And hoping in 5th grade that we learned that area is length times width. Had to remind some students about that today. I'm going to substitute my numbers in for length and width, which is 8.6 times 7.3. And then if you multiply correctly, you'll get 6278. Decimal has been moved once here and once here. So we're going to move the rock twice here, and you get 62.78 feet as being the area. Eight was a skip, and 9 was a skip. Not that I have anything against long division. It just takes a while, and we do it with decimals anyway, so we actually skipped lesson 13 and went right on to 14, which is essentially the same thing after you move the decimals. All right, so number 10. Most important thing is we need to know who's in the house, who's out the house. If it helps you to remember, crisscross. 2.4 is out, and 1843.2 is in. Do not make that determination based on which number is bigger or which one's smaller. It could be either way when it comes to decimals and division. Second number, which is also known as the divisor, is going to go on the left, and this one's going to go inside the house, otherwise known as the dividend. Now I'm just going to slide this down a little bit. Okay, I'm back after I've made some room here. We can't have a decimal outside the house. We have to create a whole number. And in order to do that, I have to move the decimal once to the right. Whatever we do outside the house, we have to do inside the house. And after I've replaced that new decimal, we want to put it lined up perfectly up on the roof, which will where our quotient will be. And then it's 24 into 1, can't go into 18, but it does go into 184 7 times. When you do that, you're going to get 168. Notice how I line this up. Take away the two numbers, you get 16. We bring down the 3. Now, since I brought down the 3, whatever digit I come up with has to go there. And 24 times 6 will work. When I do 24 times 6, we get 144. Once again, subtract because we need to keep going until we have no remainder and nothing but zeros to bring down. I'm going to wind up with 19 here, bring down my 2. So my last digit has got to go there, and it will work out evenly. It actually goes exactly 8 times. 192. We've worked to termination, what's called termination, where there is no remainder and nothing but zeros, invisible in this case, to bring down. So we're done. The answer is 768. Our last one. It winds up being division. $5.22 outside the house, 15.66 in. Gotta pop the rock twice to the right, twice to the right. And what's nice about this is 522 goes into 1,566 exactly 3 times. No remainder, nothing but zeros left. Our answer is she purchased pounds. Now on Monday, you're going to get a follow-up review packet, which pretty much follows the same exact format as this review packet. The only thing that'll be different is the numbers and the story problems or the word problems, but it's essentially the same thing. If you need to come in on Tuesday morning, I have extra help Tuesday morning at 7:15, and then the test is going to be later on the day during periods 2, 3, and 4.